Hey, it's Rob from Adulting. So, as I've said in my intro video, I am a security officer. And it's a very interesting career, and I thought I'd jump in and give my opinion, my experiences being a security officer in Ontario, Canada. Now, I can't really comment a whole lot about other provinces, other territories, because I live in Ontario. But because I'm a career minded security officer, I do know a little bit about Quebec and Alberta and other operations, and so I'll try to I'll try to talk about what I know. So I thought I'd weigh in on what it's like being a security guard slash security officer and the differences between it. Really, at the end of the day, a security guard is typically a person who they're just trying to figure out, a summer job or something to do temporarily. Um, it's not necessarily their actual career. They're thinking about becoming a banker or even a police officer or something else. And probably 90% of security people end up just being, they're just guards. You'll find a lot of retirees, they're just looking for a way to supplement their income, their pensions, and so they become security guards. They're not really thinking career, especially if you're retiring, you're not really thinking career anymore. A security officer, on the other hand, is usually much more dedicated. They're actually thinking about it as a career. And you might be thinking, well, why the heck would you want to be a security officer as a career? Everyone's treating you like they're not treating you with a whole lot of respect. Everyone thinks you're a rent-a-cop. Everyone thinks you're a make-believe wannabe cop. Well, you know what? I was in the Army for 7 years. I had to carry a gun. I had to do a whole lot of things that were not the greatest sort of situations. And frankly, I don't want to have to carry a gun anymore. Now, if my employer decides or something changes and they say, you know what, we're going to carry guns as security officers, well, so be it. I'll deal with that when it comes, and I'll make a decision if I want to stay or not. But at the end of the day, there are security positions in the province of Ontario where you have to carry a gun. Branks and Guard are perfect examples because of the cash services. But OPG, Bruce Power, these are elite tactical teams who work for nuclear power plants. They are armed to the teeth. They have tanks, APCs, well, not tanks, but armored personnel carriers, specifically to help them with tactical situations. But these aren't normal guard positions. Although they do have unarmed guards as part of their organizations, these are positions usually reserved for ex-military guys or ex-police officers. I have tried to get in there, and I don't know, they never seem to return phone calls or emails, whatever. Anyways, not to rant. So being a security officer in Ontario is kind of difficult. And why is it difficult? Well, let me tell you this. You have to deal with the fact that Ontario is one of the provinces that is inundated and overflowing with big box companies. Now, there's nothing wrong with a big box company, but when a big box company is paying their people, say, minimum wage for any given job, you're going to have a hard time finding a job that pays more than what the whole competition is paying. And it's really unfortunate because being a security guard is not as simple as you think. It's not necessarily, a guy falling asleep at the desk and answering the phone every once in a while. That's the sort of stereotypical view of being a guard. No, not anymore. I've had the chance to work in 3 hospitals, and all those hospitals, the security team, it's basically the hospital's 911. And you're dealing with combat situations on a daily basis, 6 or 7 calls per shift. You're dealing with crisis. You're dealing with mental health cases. You're dealing with people the police have brought in. You're bringing in people who they're in the worst moments of their life, and lo and behold, there's security dealing with it right then and there. They're essentially the police force of the hospital. So if you want a ton of experience, go work in a hospital, because that'll set you up real good for when you want to do your OPP or your Toronto police interview. You can say, hey, what was your experience? Well, I worked at St. Michael's Hospital. Let me tell you, they get a lot of experience. But moving on, Ontario is one of those provinces where security is everywhere. Now, what I mean by that is every single company in all of Canada has a security department, but they don't necessarily call it security because there's this sort of weird PC. I'm not even sure if PC culture is the right word, but there's this idea that security is like not quite the right word. So what I've discovered is there's a lot of places they don't call their security department security. So when you're on Indeed or Workopolis and you're looking for security jobs in Toronto, you're going to find all the big box companies, Garda, Commissionaires, Corps Commissionaires, Brinks, G4S. You're going to find all that stuff real easy. It's going to pop up like crazy. But let's say you want to work for BMW or TD Canada Trust. They call their division security, but it's not necessarily security. It could be asset management or loss prevention or protection, something along those lines. And so you have to decode companies quite often, trying to figure out what positions they have and don't have. And that can get very tiresome. On top of that, that's pretty much the same everywhere, probably. Ontario has a whole lot of resource guards, asset management guards. Why? Because we have a lot of mine industries set up in Ontario. And so you'll find in southern Ontario we have like the corporate offices, but in northern Ontario we actually have the mines and gold mines, diamond mines, the works. And those guard jobs pay real good. It's $20 an hour at least. That's not too shabby. The problem is you're gone there for 2 weeks at a time working 12-hour shifts for 2 weeks straight. And although I have not done those jobs and I have considered doing them, that's actually really tough. I'm personally not that big of a fan of the 12-hour shift. Why? Because once hour 10 hits, you're not even really thinking about the job anymore. You're so freaking tired, especially if you're not used to a 12-hour shift, that you're just like... And that's a problem, especially if you're doing any kind of safety training, any kind of safety watches. You don't want to fall asleep on the job. People's lives can be affected by it. Excuse me. So that's tough. And so when you find out, hey, you're going out there for the same rotations that the workers themselves are doing, whoa, that's kind of intense. And so that takes a whole different breed of person that's willing to do that. And then on top of that, the travel's kind of crazy. Where I live, I'm nowhere near any big mines, so I would have to travel every other week or so, 4.5 hours north just to go work at the mines. It's crazy. But again, those are jobs that are there. Then there's in-house, there's contracted, there's blended, there's different styles of security. And in-house is generally paid more. Blended can be paid more depending on which level you work for. And then there is the contracted guys. Contracted can give you good experiences, but at the end of the day, it really depends to the client what they want to pay you. And then to make matters worse, you find out a lot of companies, they'll be charging like a couple $1 million for the security they're offering, but you're only getting minimum wage. And you're like, what the hell? Why am I only getting minimum wage for a contract that you found out is worth $3 million a year? There's only like 6 guys. It's like, how is that possible? It's the cut. And it's not necessarily the level of work, the level of risk doesn't necessarily reflect your pay, which is really unfortunate, because in a corporate setting, you get paid based on your skills, based on how stressful the job is, and how much equipment is required, how much training is required. And so there's this table that regulates what you get paid. A police officer gets paid the amount of money they get because they have to wear a vest, they have to carry a gun, they're expected to know the laws, they're expected to arrest people all the time. There's a level of risk. There's all sorts of these different factors that regulate their pay scale. Well, a security officer has to carry, in some cases, a gun, sometimes, like cash guys, Brinks and Garda, they do a lot of that stuff. Sometimes you have to carry a vest. Well, if you're wearing a vest, a bulletproof vest or a stab vest, someone has made the decision that your job carries that level of risk, but you're not paid in reflection to that risk, and it's really upsetting. And hopefully things are going to be changing in Ontario pretty soon. There's quite a few lobbying entities. Steelworkers Union's one of them. They've been lobbying the government quite hard to change how the province pays security guards, or to force the province to pass laws that will see an effective change for security. Because unfortunately, one of the things that's a problem for security, as well as the pay issues, is we're taken advantage of pretty hard. And so what I mean by this is you have to pay for your security license test. So one, you pay for the course. Well, the test is not included in paying for the course, so now you got to go pay for the test. So that's just two things you paid for. But now if you want to be a private investigator, well, there's another course and another payment. And then on top of that, you want to get use of force training, and I highly suggest you get use of force training, because if you get into a fight or you do something silly like trying to arrest someone without use of force training, you're in big trouble, especially if you do something wrong. So you go get use of force training. Well, that costs money. But then the thing that most companies won't tell you is that your use of force training in Ontario is good forever once you have it. But they like to play this game where, well, you have to get recertified every single year. You don't. I was shocked to find that out. I was like, what? I've paid for use of force training now like 5 times. And it's really frustrating because a lot of companies, each company will pretend that their training is the best training, when half the time you'll take a different course done by, say, XOPP officers, and you find out, wow, this is the best course I've ever taken, and that's nothing like the course I've did with, this other company. And so it's really frustrating. And that's not it. The CPR first aid courses, talk down training. I've seen some companies that want fall arrest training. You're a security guard. What the heck do you need fall arrest training for? No, that's job specific. But at the end of the day, you got to pay for all that stuff. And when you're making minimum wage, it's not that great. So I'm not trying to discourage people from becoming security guards, but it really depends what you want to do, what you see yourself doing. Now, I became a security officer because I really was failing at being a civilian. I left the Army in 2008, and I tried all sorts of different things here and there and everywhere. And although I liked some of the stuff I was doing, I had all this information in my head about being an infantry soldier, and I couldn't get rid of it. And then I decided, you know what, I'm going to stop fighting my tendencies, and I'm going to use this knowledge I have, and lo and behold, it worked really well for me. But it also took me like 5 years to find the perfect little niche. And I found it, and I'm happy where I am. It's great. But that doesn't stop you from looking at opportunities every once in a while. And so, it means you got to stay focused. And at the end of the day, that's really important. And you got to be happy. Because at the end of the day, if you hate your job, you hate what you're doing every single day, you're going to move on. And there are jobs like that in security. I was literally contracted once to watch a wall. Why? Because the wall had this big, beautiful mural on it, and they were painting it. And there were these hooligans who were, every once in a while, that they'd mess with the wall. So they stick a security guard on it, hoping that that'll be enough to scare away anyone who's wants to mess with the wall. And let me tell you, sitting there 12 hours a day staring at a wall, literally watching paint dry, makes you think, what am I doing with my life? And it sucks. But you know what? Every guard has done it. And eventually you'll work your way up to a position where now you're working for the corporation. And in Toronto especially, that's one of those jobs where you start getting paid a little more money. There's a little bit more responsibility, and it starts being better. So, this other topic I wanted to bring up was these elite security guards. So you'll often see some of the big box companies talking about elite security. Garda and G4S both have these groups. And these groups are paid generally a little bit better, like $21 an hour starting, which is pretty good in most places, but these guards only usually exist in bigger cities like Toronto, Ottawa. And they really play off the military card. You'll see the pictures. They're wearing their beret, and they're wearing combat boots, and it sort of looks like a civilian version of security. But their training, the jobs they do, is still much more intense. Airport security, especially. Now, I've never done it. I've never worked in that capacity, but it's something that's always interested me. And that's definitely a place to go, especially if you're a reservist. Being a security guard has got some perks to it. The Corps Commissionaires actually offers a medal after 12 years of service with the Corps. Now, if you're a medal chaser and you're not getting medals in the reserves, this is a way to go. And it is an official medal as part of the decoration standard. So that's kind of an interesting perk. But really, at the end of the day, security is about being part of a larger community. At least that's the way I see it. You're building a relationship with your community. And I'll talk about a little bit more specific about that in a different video. But security is, I see it as a way of serving that community. Simply saying hello to people, talking to them. You see a light on in the middle of the night and you're like, what the hell's going on? You're checking the building, right? You go investigate, and sure enough, someone's working real late for whatever reason. Just popping in and saying, hey, how you doing? You're letting them know you're there. And at the end of the day, that person knows, hey, I'm not alone in the building. Security's around. If I need help, they're here. Walk those people to their car in the middle of the night. There's some places, where the light coverage isn't all that great. You don't feel safe. That's what we're here for. You're providing a service. You assist police. And if you're a competent guard and you deal with police on a regular basis, they're eventually going to see that you're a good guy. And they're not going to treat you like, a wannabe cop. And I'm saying that's not necessarily a bad thing, but in my experience, it has been. You don't get quite the same level of respect. But once the police see that you're a good guy, generally speaking, they treat you good. They're like, hey, how you doing? Not too bad. Yeah, it's great. So anyways, I guess I'll wrap that up. I'll probably touch base on what being a security guard means and more stuff like that later on. But if you'd like to like and subscribe to this video or my channel, that'd be great. I'm going to be talking about this kind of stuff more often. Probably also going to be doing some home improvement videos coming up and talking about, the fact that I never thought about doing gutters before. It's like you think you buy a house with gutters already installed, but lo and behold, the gutters fall off and I had to learn how to install gutters. It's like, whoa. Anyways, thanks very much, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.